When a young woman dies under strange circumstances, it might seem like everything's clear. But sometimes, beneath the surface, there's a story that will turn everything upside down. I was already standing there when the agents rolled up around noon. The kind of scene that feels strange, almost unreal, in the calm morning light of Napa County. My name's Victor Hawkins. I'm the sheriff here. Been with this county for over 15 years. I know this place like the back of my hand. Every dirt road, every vineyard. And yet I've never come across a case like this. Not in Napa. It's usually quiet, predictable. Tourists come and go, and the biggest problem we deal with is a stolen bottle of wine or a lost dog. Today was different. They called it in just after 6 a.m. The hunting dog found her. A young woman lying face up in a large pit, dug not far from the crop fields off Highway 29. The dog's sudden, frantic barking alerted the hunters, and then the sheriff's office. Instead of a deer, there she was, still, silent, and surrounded by freshly disturbed earth. This wasn't some accident. This was deliberate. Someone wanted to hide her. The woman, still no ID at that point, was dressed in a way that suggested she was local. The kind of clothes someone might wear to a casual day out, maybe to work or a small-town coffee shop. Nothing flashy, nothing that screamed out of place in these parts, but familiar. I thought maybe someone would recognize her. When the agents arrived, I greeted them by the edge of that pit, the air thick with the smell of damp earth and early morning chill. Elena Rowe was leading the team, sharp-eyed, professional. She nodded at me as we exchanged facts. "She's not local," one of them said at first. I shook my head. "No, I think she is. Clothes say so." The agents descended into the pit, examining the body. One agent looked up and said, "Her wounds aren't fatal. Eyes bloodshot, gums pale. Looks like she died of asphyxiation." I swallowed hard. "Yeah, sounds right. Could be a junkie passing through who'd lost control. Or maybe worse." But then came Silas Keene, quiet, almost ghost-like. He had no badge but carried himself with an air of calm certainty. His gaze swept the scene like he was already inside the moment that led to her death. I admit I was skeptical. When he started talking about the killer being local and the murder a mistake, that it wasn't meant to happen, I nearly smiled. A consultant without a badge, saying things like that, seemed like a circus act. But then he added, "And that pit, someone local would know about this spot. Off the highway, behind the crop fields. No outsider's going to bring her here by accident." I glanced at Elena, asking, "Who's this guy?" "Silas Keene," she replied. "Our consultant, not an agent." Later that afternoon, after the forensics team had bagged and tagged everything they could, we drove out to the girl's address. We didn't get her name until an hour later. County records matched a missing persons report, filed around 9 a.m. Joseph and Diane Rains had called it in. Said their daughter hadn't come home the night before, that she sometimes worked late and they usually didn't see her until morning, but something felt wrong this time. They were right. I got the call from dispatch. The operator was calm. She just said, "Looks like her name's Ellie Rains, 23, Yountville address." I remember the way her parents looked at us when we pulled up the driveway. They were standing on the porch, like they'd been waiting for someone. Not me, not Elena Rowe, and sure as hell not Silas Keene. But they knew something wasn't right. It was a modest one-story house. Nothing about it said tragedy, until we stepped out of the car. They didn't know yet, not officially. The father, Joseph, was the first to speak. "Is this about Ellie?" That was her name, Ellie Rains, 23 years old. Waitressed at a diner off Silverado Trail, midnight shifts mostly. Kind of a loner from what I'd gathered, the kind of girl who never made trouble. Elena took a step forward. I'm afraid we have some difficult news. The woman, Diane, made a sound I'll never forget. A breath that caught in her throat, like she was choking on nothing. Her hand went to her mouth. Tears welled up before we even said the words. We went inside. The house was spotless, photos on the mantel, candles on the table, a couch that had clearly been used often. Everything about it said family and comfort. I've had to say it before, and it never gets easier. I'm sorry, I said. Your daughter was found this morning, out near the crops off 29. We believe she was killed sometime last night. There's always a moment after you say those words, the silence, like the air gets sucked out of the room. And then it hits, the disbelief, the pleading. Diane just kept whispering no over and over. Joseph went real quiet, gripped the armrest so hard his knuckles turned white. I have a daughter too, I said quietly. 19. And I can't imagine what you're going through. Joseph finally looked up. There was no anger in his face, just a vast, hollow pain. She didn't come home last night, he said, but we thought she stays with friends sometimes. We understand, Elena said. Can you tell us about her usual routine? Anyone she might have seen last night? Diane wasn't ready to speak, but Joseph gave us names. A few friends. One stood out, Kyle Redding. Worked the same night shifts at the diner. Joseph didn't seem particularly fond of him. He was always hanging around, he said. Ellie didn't talk much about him. While Elena was talking to them, Silas, he got up without a word and asked if he could see Ellie's room. He always asks, but it's not really a question. They nodded and he quietly slipped down the hallway. I followed him a minute later. The door creaked softly as Silas pushed it open. Ellie's room was modest, maybe 10 by 12, small but clean, walls pale green, a bookshelf full of novels and art magazines. One of those cheap record players on the desk, stack of vinyls beside it. Joni Mitchell, Mazzy Star, Phoebe Bridgers. Silas stepped in first and paused just inside the threshold, eyes slowly scanning from floor to ceiling. He didn't touch anything, not yet. He just observed. See this? He said, almost in a whisper, pointing to the nightstand. 2 cups, one half full of something black, probably cold coffee. The other empty, but with lipstick on the rim. Someone else was here? He shrugged lightly. Or she was here yesterday with a friend, but the cups haven't been washed. One has more dust on the rim. The newer one, the lipstick one, is clean. But I'm not sure yet. Maybe. There were fairy lights pinned around the window, photos taped to the mirror. Ellie and some friends, a cat, her parents, and one of her with a boy, hugging outside a diner, both wearing aprons. Her coworker, maybe. He didn't look like much. Hoodie, shaggy hair, cigarette in hand. It was most likely Kyle Redding, whom her father had mentioned. Silas stood at the edge of the room, hands in his pockets, just looking, like he was reading a map only he could see. He pointed gently to the photos. You see that one? He asked. Yeah, I said. Boyfriend? I don't think so. Look at how she's standing. She's leaning away from him. He moved his fingers slightly, measuring the space between their bodies. She's smiling, but her eyes aren't engaged. He's holding tighter than she is. There's tension there. I nodded, though I wouldn't have noticed it on my own. The only question is, why hang this photo? Then he pointed to the vinyls. Phoebe Bridgers. That's breakup music. I raised an eyebrow. You're telling me a teenager liking sad songs is evidence? Silas smiled faintly. No, but it's context. The way she processed pain. You'd be surprised how many answers people leave behind. Not in words, but in the things they keep close. There was a long pause. We were quiet a moment, both staring at the small, intimate corners of a life now gone. That's the thing about death. It doesn't erase a person. It leaves outlines, Impressions. The way a handprint stays on glass even after the fingers are gone. Silas walked toward the door, then paused. "She liked order," he said. "Look at how the books are arranged, tallest to shortest." He didn't say anything else, just walked out, leaving me standing there in the echo of Ellie Raines's life. We left the house about half an hour later. On the way back to the car, I asked Elena, low voice, casual tone, "Your consultant, he always like this?" She smiled just a bit. "You get used to him." I'm not sure I want to. But I'll admit, he saw things I didn't. And maybe that's exactly why they brought him in. We made our way to the diner that evening just before sunset, Ellie's workplace. It sat off the main road like a lot of places in Napa do, quiet, unassuming. Neon sign half flickering, metal chairs stacked on the patio. A couple of trucks parked in the back. From the outside, it looked like nothing, just another roadside spot for coffee and fries. But for Ellie, this was where she spent most of her nights. A place like this sees everything. Lovers arguing in booths, truckers dozing over black coffee, kids sneaking in after curfew. And the staff? They hear it all. So I figured we'd start there. Inside, the place smelled like old grease and lemon cleaner. The booths were red vinyl, cracked in places, and the floors had that thin layer of grime that never fully comes up no matter how hard you mop. There was music playing low, some country song I didn't recognize. A girl behind the counter spotted us first. Maybe 20, maybe less. Nervous the moment she saw my badge. "You the sheriff?" she asked, voice tight. "Yeah, I'm Victor Hawkins. This is Agent Rowe." She glanced at Silas, confused. "He's with us," Elena said. "That's Mr. Keene." The girl nodded slowly, wiping her hands on her apron. "You're here about Ellie?" I didn't answer that directly, just asked, "You work with her?" "Yeah," she said. "Name's Gina. We did nights together, couple times a week." "Was she here last night?" Gina hesitated, just a flicker, barely a pause. "Yeah, she clocked in around 10. I left at 1. She stayed till close." "Close being?" 3, sometimes later if cleanup took a while. "Who else was working?" "Just Kyle." There it was. The name again, Kyle Redding. We ran a soft check, no record. Local address, parents divorced. Lives with his older brother Brent, out near Dry Creek Road. A part of the county that had more tractors than people. Elena said the brothers were known to law enforcement, but just barely. Brent had a reckless driving charge last year. Kyle was clean, mostly. He wasn't in the diner now. "Who's your boss?" I asked Gina. She hesitated again, then answered, "Nate Barlow. He owns the place." "Elena tried to reach him earlier," I said. "No answer." "He's out of town," Gina said. "Told us last week he'd be gone the whole weekend. Left Thursday night, I think." "Where'd he go?" "Lake Tulloch. That's what he said anyway. Some fishing trip. No cell reception out there. He always brags about it. Off the grid, he calls it." That tracked. I'd been out to Lake Tulloch a few times myself. Spotty reception, unless you knew where to stand. Still, the timing didn't sit right. "He leaves someone in charge?" I asked. She shook her head. "Not really. We just kind of run it. He trusts us." Silas tilted his head. "How often does he leave you kids in charge of a full business?" Gina shrugged. "More than you'd think. He's not real hands-on. Only shows up a couple days a week." "Is he the one who hired Ellie?" "Yeah, her and Kyle. He interviewed them himself. Doesn't do that much anymore." We asked for the employee records. Gina disappeared into the back, flipping the open sign to closed as she passed the front window. Meanwhile, Silas had wandered off toward the booths. Not aimless. Never aimless with him. He moved like someone listening for something the rest of us couldn't hear. He stopped at the second booth from the back wall. "This is where she sat," he said quietly. I walked over. The seat was scuffed, the table wiped but still faintly sticky, same as the others. I raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" He nodded once. "There's a scratch here," he pointed, just a shallow line in the laminate, like someone dragged a key or a nail across it. "Fresh. See the shine?" I looked closer. He was right. It hadn't dulled with time. "She sat here," Silas said, "and she wasn't alone." I followed his gaze to the opposite seat. "Kyle?" "Maybe. But whoever it was, they argued. Look at the pattern of the napkin holder. It's been pushed to the edge. People do that when they're reaching across, making a point. And there's a sugar packet under the table torn in half." "Could have been anyone." He didn't argue, just stared at the torn packet for a long beat, then turned and walked to the counter. Gina came back with a thin folder. "Employee logs. Kyle's last shift was last night, same as Ellie. She clocked out at 3:08 a.m. He clocked out at 3:12, 4 minutes apart. "Did she say anything strange before she left?" Elena asked. Gina thought for a moment, then shook her head. "No, she was tired, quiet. I think her head hurt or something. She kept rubbing her temples." Silas leaned in. "Was she scared?" Gina blinked. "No, I don't think so, just distracted." We thanked her and stepped outside. Sun was low now, throwing long shadows across the parking lot. I lit a cigarette, mostly out of habit. "She left at 3:08, I said. "She was found at 6, that's a short window." "She didn't drive," Elena added. "No car at the house, no license in the system. Then someone picked her up." Silas was quiet. Then, "Let's find Kyle." "You think he did it?" "I think," Silas said slowly. "He knows something." I let out a slow breath. "I don't like it." Elena tapped her pen on her notebook. "The part where the boss left town just before one of his employees turned up dead?" I nodded. "That part exactly." "She said he left Thursday night," Elena said. "Lake Tulloch. Fishing, no cell reception. Just so happens to miss everything. Just so happens not to leave anyone in charge. Except 2 20-somethings running a late-night diner alone," I muttered. "That strike you as normal?" "No," I said flatly. Silas finally spoke. "She was afraid to say his name." I turned to him. "Gina?" He nodded. "She hesitated twice. Once when you asked who was in charge, and again when you brought up trying to reach him. Not the kind of pause you get from forgetting something. It was rehearsed." "She protecting him?" Elena asked. "Or herself?" I leaned back against the hood of the cruiser. So Nate Barlow owns the diner, doesn't show up half the time, leaves 2 kids to run it, hires Ellie and Kyle personally, then disappears right before one of them ends up dead. Tell me that's not a pattern. "He could just be irresponsible," Elena offered. "Or worse," I said. "He could be smart." She narrowed her eyes. "You think he knew something was going to happen?" "I think," I said. "He's been running a place with 0 oversight, and just enough plausible deniability to stay off everyone's radar. A girl ends up dead on his clock, and suddenly he's unreachable in the woods." Silas turned towards the diner one last time. The neon sign was still flickering faintly. "He hired them himself," he said, "but doesn't do that anymore." "So why them? Why Ellie? Why Kyle?" "Gina said he lives out past Dry Creek with his brother Brent," I said, already walking around to the driver's side. "Brent's got a reckless driving on file. Nothing major. Kyle's clean." "For now," I muttered. Gina had told us everything she could, or maybe just everything she was willing to. The ride out to Dry Creek was flat and quiet. We passed rows of bare vineyards and rusted-out tractors. Cell service was spotty at best, same as it had been 10 years ago. Nothing much changed in this part of the county. Kyle Redding lived with his brother in a 1-story farmhouse that sat at the edge of a dry field. Faded paint, a porch light, and a Ford Ranger in the gravel drive with a cracked windshield and one flat tire. No lights inside. I cut the engine and stepped out first. "Think he's home?" Elena asked, scanning the windows. "If he's smart, he's not," I said. Silas didn't speak. After a second, he pointed toward the side yard. There. Movement. I motioned to Elena and we moved fast. Around the side of the house, and there he was, Kyle Redding, 19. Thin, pale, hoodie pulled halfway over his face, hand shaking just enough to notice. He saw us and froze, eyes wide like a deer that hadn't decided whether to bolt or beg. "It's okay," I said calmly. "We just want to talk." He didn't move. Elena stepped forward, badge out. "Kyle, I'm Elena Rowe, the agent. We're not here to arrest you. We just need to ask about last night." He looked past her, at me, then at Silas, who stood completely still, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. Kyle exhaled and said, "I already told you people everything." "We're not you people," I said. "This is the first time we're talking." "I mean, I told the other guy, the deputy, on the phone this morning." "Phone's not the same," I said. "Especially when your coworker turns up dead." His eyes darted. Fear now. Real fear. "She was okay when I left," he said quickly. "I swear, I didn't do anything." "We didn't say you did," Elena said. Kyle backed up a step, bumping into the corner of the shed. "You think I hurt her?" Silas took one slow step forward. "Did you?" Kyle's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Then finally, "No, I wouldn't, Ellie. She was good. You left 4 minutes after her," I said, "at 3:12. He blinked. "I had to mop. She always left right after cleanup. I stayed to lock up." "Did she leave alone?" He hesitated. I stepped closer. "Kyle." I think so. I didn't see anyone. I didn't hear a car." "Did she say anything? Seem upset?" He shook his head fast. "No, just tired, like off, like she had a headache or something." "She argue with anyone?" Silas asked. Kyle glanced at him, then looked away. "Not that I saw." "But you were working together," I said. "Whole night. You didn't see her sit with anyone?" Kyle swallowed hard. She did talk to someone, real quick, like 10 minutes. "Who?" He hesitated again. "Elena," I said. "Run the brother's name again. Brent Redding. See if he's home." That made Kyle blink. "It wasn't Brent," he said quickly. "It wasn't anyone I knew. Just some guy." Silas's eyes narrowed. "Older? Younger?" "Older," Kyle said. "Not old, but like 30s, jacket, ball cap." I didn't catch his face. He sat in the corner booth for a while. Then Ellie came out of the kitchen and sat with him. Didn't look happy. Did they argue? I don't know. It looked tense. She didn't sit long, maybe 5 minutes. Then she went back to work. He left not long after. "What time?" Elena asked. Kyle shook his head. "Midnight, maybe a little later." Silas spoke softly. "Did she know him?" Kyle looked at the ground. "I think so." I crossed my arms. "You tell the deputy any of this morning?" He winced. "No, I didn't think it mattered." I exhaled. "It matters now." We stood there a moment, nothing but the wind moving through the dry grass. In the distance, a barn creaked once. "Can you describe him?" Elena asked. Kyle shook his head. "Not really. He didn't talk much. Just didn't look like the type that belonged there, you know. Like he wasn't there for coffee." I caught Silas's eye. He was already thinking it through. We both were. A man in his 30s. Late night. Unfamiliar. Met with Ellie briefly. She didn't look happy. And the boss, Nate Barlow, just happens to be out of town? I turned back to Kyle. "You still got your phone?" He pulled it from his hoodie pocket and handed it over. I passed it to Elena. "Check his calls and texts, just in case." Kyle didn't argue. Maybe he really didn't do anything, but he'd seen something, or someone. And whoever that someone was, we needed a name. Silas walked a slow circle around the shed, then came back and stood beside me. He said, "We need to talk to Brent next." I nodded. "Let's hope he's more helpful than his brother." Kyle looked up, confused. "Brent wasn't even home last night." I turned. "Where was he?" Kyle opened his mouth and then stopped. Right then I knew. He was holding back something big. We didn't have to go far to find Brent. We were already on his porch when his pickup pulled into the driveway. He killed the engine and stepped out, tall, broader than Kyle, maybe mid-20s. Baseball cap pulled low, oil-stained jeans. He froze when he saw us. I stepped forward, badge still visible. "Brent Redding." He didn't answer right away, just looked past me at Kyle, who was still sitting on the steps. Then Brent said, "What's going on?" Silas was the one who answered. "We were hoping you'd tell us." Brent frowned. "Is this about Ellie?" I didn't reply, just nodded toward the house. "Mind if we talk inside?" He hesitated, then shrugged. "Sure." Inside, the place was what you'd expect from two young guys living alone. Cluttered, a little sour-smelling, but not filthy. Pizza boxes stacked near the trash. A cracked TV remote on the counter. Dog didn't even bark when we came in, just lay stretched on the floor like it had seen enough visitors to stop caring. Brent offered us nothing. No water, no coffee. Just stood with his back near the sink. I said, "Where were you last night?" Brent raised an eyebrow. "That why you're here?" Just answer. "Out. Friend's place." "Spent the night?" "Name?" He paused half a beat too long. "Ty Moreno. Lives out by the orchard line." "You call him this morning?" "No. Why would I?" "Because if you're using him as an alibi, we're going to check." Brent smirked, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Go ahead." Elena was already typing into her phone, pulling up addresses, maybe numbers. I could see it in the way her thumbs moved. Silas stayed silent, watching, always watching. Brent turned his attention to Kyle. "You say anything?" Kyle didn't look at him, just stared at the floor like it held all the answers he didn't want to give. "We talked," I said. "Not enough." Brent frowned deeper. "He didn't do anything." "Didn't say he did." "But that's what you're thinking, right?" Brent took a step closer. "Look, my brother's a lot of things, but he's not a killer. He liked Ellie, maybe too much. But he wouldn't hurt her." "Did you like her?" Silas asked suddenly. Brent turned. "What?" "Elena said you met her a few times, picked Kyle up after shifts, maybe had a few conversations of your own." Brent scoffed. "She was nice, yeah, pretty, but not my type, if that's what you're fishing for." Silas tilted his head. "No fishing. Just curious why Kyle said you weren't home last night. If you were with Ty, why'd he hesitate?" That landed. Brent's jaw tightened. "Because he doesn't think straight under pressure. That doesn't mean anything." "Maybe," I said. "But maybe it means he saw something he's too scared to say." Brent pushed off the counter. "You think I did something? That it?" "We think," I said slowly, "someone knows more than they're saying." "I didn't touch that girl," Brent said. "Neither did Kyle. And if you're wasting your time here, then whoever did this to her is still out there." He stormed past us and out the front door, grabbing his keys off the hook on the way. Kyle finally looked up. "He's not lying," he muttered. By the time we left the Redding property, night had fully settled over Dry Creek. The sky was a deep navy, speckled with stars, barely visible behind the thin veil of fog. The chill had set in. Elena was on her phone as we walked toward the sheriff's cruiser. "Yeah, got it. Text me if she says anything different." She ended the call and looked up. "Luis is heading over to talk to Ty now. We need to confirm Brent's alibi." I nodded slowly. "If Brent's lying, she's our best bet to catch it." She didn't sound nervous, Elena said. Said Brent was with her all night. Watched a movie, then he passed out on her couch. Still need to confirm. We will. Elena's phone buzzed again. She glanced down and gave a small nod. Ty confirmed Brent stayed over, she said. Louise said she seemed genuine, claimed Brent showed up around midnight and didn't leave until late morning. I exhaled sharply through my nose. So, unless they're both lying, Brent's probably clean. I wasn't ready to cross him off the list just yet, but the focus was shifting. Elena tapped her phone again. Louise also sent over something from the station, surveillance footage. From where? Gas station on Route 29, timestamps 3:14 a.m. I raised an eyebrow. That's just minutes after Ellie clocked out. We got into our cars and headed for the station. The roads were nearly empty. The silence only broken by the hum of the engine and the crackle of the radio. At the station, Louise met us in the evidence room, already hooked up to a monitor. We got the footage from the gas station cameras, he said, sliding a USB stick across the table. Not the clearest, but it's something. Elena plugged it in, and the screen flickered to life. There, on grainy black and white video, a dark pickup pulled up. The timestamp read 3:14 a.m. Louise pointed. And that's Kyle Redding, caught buying snacks. And there, Elena said, see that? A figure coming out of the diner parking lot, walking toward the pickup. We leaned in. The person was smaller. Could it be Ellie? Suddenly, the pickup door swung open. A man stepped out, a heavy-set figure, hard to make out clearly. Zoom in, I said. Louise adjusted the zoom, and the man's face came into better focus. Silas tilted his head slightly. I've seen that face before. I looked at him. Where? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he took out his phone and started flipping through the diner's employee records. The same ones Gina had given us. He stopped on a photo. Nate Barlow, the diner's owner. Silas turned the screen to us. Tell me I'm wrong. Out of town, off the grid. But here he was on camera, just minutes after Ellie left. I looked at Elena and Silas. Looks like we've got more questions than answers. Silas nodded slowly. And some secrets to uncover. Outside the windows, Dry Creek was fast asleep, the streets empty. A quick glance at the clock on the wall, 2:07 a.m. No wonder everything felt slower now, heavier. Luis leaned back in his chair, rubbing his face. It's late, or early, depending how you look at it. Elena stepped back from the monitor. We've got Nate on camera. That's something. The pickup is his, timestamp matches, and he lied about being out of town. I nodded slowly, staring at the paused frame on the screen. Nate Barlow stepping out of the pickup just minutes after Ellie left the diner. We need to talk to him, I said. First thing. Luis stood up. I'll pull whatever DMV records I can on that pickup. Maybe we catch another detail in the morning. I looked at all of them. Tired, focused, wired on instinct and caffeine. We meet here at 7, and then we knock on his door. Elena gave a curt nod. We all needed sleep, but tomorrow we'd be waking someone up. The morning had come too fast. Barely 5 hours ago, we were huddled around that monitor. Now we were gathered again, me, Elena, Silas, and Luis, just after sunrise. The coffee was strong, and no one said much. Elena stood by the board, reviewing the footage and timelines for the 100th time. I was halfway through a sip when the door opened. Luis stepped in, face unreadable. He gave a tight nod. Sheriff, Silas, Elena. He closed the door behind him. I just got off the phone with a deputy upstate. CHP found a vehicle this morning, just past mile marker 41 off Highway 108. Black pickup. A heavy silence settled over the room. Nate was inside, dead. Gunshot wound to the head. No sign of forced entry. Keys were still in the ignition. No note. The room fell still. Elena was the first to speak. Dead? Luis added. CHP's calling it a likely suicide, pending coroner confirmation, but it looks clean. No signs of struggle, nothing in the area, just the car and Nate. Time of death? Coroner's estimate says between 3 and 5 this morning. Elena muttered. We just saw him. On that gas station footage. Luis nodded. Right. I noticed how steady his voice was. Silas finally looked up. When was the body found? 6:10 a.m., Luis replied. Unit ran the plates and called it in. No one spoke for a few beats. I finally said we were going to visit him this morning. Luis looked at me. I know, Silas said. Someone got to him first. Luis didn't answer. Funny, Silas said slowly. We saw Nate at that station. He looked restless. Luis replied, You think he was running? Maybe, Silas said, or maybe trying to warn someone. Luis gave a small shrug. I said, That makes 2 deaths now. Ellie and her boss, both connected to the diner, both within 24 hours. Silas added, It's a knot. Someone tied it. He looked at Luis. Not glaring, not hostile, just watching, like a quiet scanner. Luis didn't flinch. You think someone's cleaning house? Maybe, Silas said. Or maybe it's personal. Luis tilted his head slightly. What do you think, Silas? I think whoever did this is calm under pressure. Luis nodded slowly. Yeah, feels that way. Silas hadn't said anything more. But I knew that look in his eyes. He noticed something. Not enough to speak up. Not yet, but enough to remember. The room stayed quiet long after Luis left. His boots? Did you see them? Silas said. I frowned. His boots? Shined, fresh polish. No dust on the soles, not a speck. Elena blinked. So he said he got a call from CHP around 6, then came straight here, which means he either stopped to shine his boots before walking into a potential double homicide case. Or, I said, or he never went to bed. I looked at Silas, and he looked at me. You think Luis? Silas interrupted. I think he's used to pressure, and if he had anything to do with Ellie's death, and now Nate shows up dead hours after we saw him on camera, maybe Luis felt the clock ticking. Elena asked, He's the one who told us to review the gas station footage. If Nate's in that video and Luis knew it, why point us toward it at all? Silas shook his head slowly. I don't think he did know. Looked like genuine surprise when I paused the tape. Come on, I said. I've known Luis 12 years. He's family. He's been in my home. You're saying he... I exhaled through my nose, trying not to raise my voice. It's insane. Neither of them spoke. In the past 24 hours, we've had Kyle Redding on the hook, his brother, Nate Barlow, then maybe some jealous co-worker. Now it's my own deputy under fire. What's next, my golden retriever? I let out a dry laugh, more bitter than amused. No offense, but are you folks here to solve a murder, or are we auditioning for a traveling circus? Elena didn't smile. Silas didn't even blink. I looked at them both, waiting for someone to laugh it off. No one did. That's what scared me. Silas finally turned from the window. Where did Luis go? I checked my watch. Said he needed to check something at the crime scene. Took one of the cruisers. He went alone? Yeah. I kept going over it in my head. Luis, the boots, the timing, the look on his face. And then abruptly, Elena's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. Text from Gina, she said. She's been cleaning up at the diner. Says she found something weird under one of the tables. Silas turned, instantly focused. What kind of weird? Elena scrolled. She thought it was a sugar packet, white powder inside. But it didn't look or feel like sugar. And the label had this tiny red dot near the seam, like someone marked it. That snapped something loose in Silas. I saw it in his face. He looked at me. You remember the table? Back wall near the window? Yeah. There was a ripped packet under it. I saw it the first time we walked in just before you took that call. I remember because there was a scratch on the tabletop, Looked like someone had been dragging their keys across it, angry. My mouth went dry. Elena was already on speaker with her. "How many packets like that did you find?" she asked. 3. One of them was torn open under the prep table, same red mark. Silas straightened a little. "Ellie cleaned under there," Gina added. "Night she died, she mentioned feeling dizzy. I figured she was just tired, but now..." My jaw tightened. "Where are the packets now?" Silas asked. "In a Ziploc. I didn't know what else to do. We'll pick them up," he said. Elena ended the call with Gina, my mind racing. 3 packets, all marked with that tiny red dot. "I want to know how Ellie ended up with those packets," Silas said, voice low but firm, "and why she felt sick the night she died." "There's more." Elena nodded. "My team spoke with the gas station clerk. Nate asked for surveillance footage. The clerk said Nate seemed urgent, but his request was refused because he wasn't with law enforcement." The pieces jostled in my mind. Nate showed up at the gas station at 3:14 a.m., asking for surveillance footage. Didn't even pump gas. Just the footage. Why? What was he looking for? Silas leaned forward, eyes sharp. Sounds like Nate was trying to find out who was watching, maybe even trying to cover his tracks. But covering what? I asked, the frustration creeping in. His upcoming crime, or something else? Silas shrugged slightly. Maybe he tried to warn Ellie. Wait a second. That doesn't line up. Gina and Kyle both said Nate hadn't been to the diner since Thursday. No one saw him that night. That's true, Silas said quietly. Then maybe he didn't go inside. Perhaps he met Ellie somewhere nearby, or she could have slipped out to talk to him. I sighed, feeling worn out. The more I think about it, the less it makes sense. What the hell is going on here? Is Nate really the killer, or someone else? It's been over a day now. This case keeps twisting and turning, and it's wearing me down. And now, Luis, I keep thinking about the way Silas pointed out those boots. Why the hell would that even matter? Silas didn't say much, but I could tell he had a plan brewing. When we heard about those sugar packets from Gina, something sparked in his eyes. He suddenly seemed more focused, more alert. We headed to Gina's first, grabbed the sugar packets with the red marks. We stayed there a little longer, about 10 minutes, going over what we knew. Then we made our way to the spot where they'd found Nate. Crime scene techs were already there, called in almost 3 hours ago, right after the body was found. Elena's agents were on site, too. Luis stood off to the side, calm and composed, like he'd been waiting for us. It was just past 9 a.m. The agents threw out theories. Maybe Nate had done this himself. Silas let them talk, then calmly cut in. Look closer. The entry wounds on the left side of his head, and the bullet shattered the right front window, clean through. But that window was intact when they arrived, which means it was rolled down when the shot was fired. He scanned the scene, making sure everyone followed. Nate was right-handed. It's possible to shoot left-handed, sure. Pulling the trigger isn't hard. But would he think to roll down the left window and shoot left-handed if he was planning this? Unlikely. When someone's focused on ending their life, they don't overcomplicate things. He crouched by the open driver's door. Now look at the body's posture. That's not how people sit when they're about to pull a trigger. That's not a moment of desperation. That's an execution. He stepped back, eyes sweeping the scene like reading a hidden story. And one more thing. The area had been cleaned up, but not completely. Whoever did this left behind something small, invisible at first glance. Silence fell over the scene, not a room, but out here in the open. It was like another one of Silas's circus acts. Everyone was watching, wondering, what territory is he talking about? What's he getting at? Yeah, he could grab attention like that, no question. I glanced at Luis. Silas moved closer, calm. like he held all the cards. Then, just as they talked, the sugar packets, the ones with the red marks, accidentally slipped from Silas's pocket and hit the ground. Silas wasn't looking for proof. He just needed to see Luis's reaction. Had Luis ever seen these packets before? Luis's eyes flicked down. For a brief moment, everything was clear. That look told Silas everything he needed to know. Silas had his own suspicions, things he never said aloud. But I kept wondering, why? Why did he flinch? What could connect Luis to these packets? How did he even know about them? Luis's face tightened for a moment, just a flicker. But then he masked it with that calm, unreadable look he always wore. Silas noticed immediately. "You seem familiar with these," he said, nodding toward the sugar packets. "Care to explain?" The agent shifted, watching the exchange closely. Silas's gaze didn't leave Luis. Coincidence or not, these packets were marked for a reason. And I think you know why. The real question is, what was your connection to Nate? Because I can tell you recognize these packets, no doubt about it. He paused for just a beat. If you knew what else that diner was being used for, beyond fries and milkshakes, then what went wrong? You and Nate were working together, so did he cut you out? Or maybe it goes deeper. Silas continued, almost like he was musing aloud, flipping through possibilities. Maybe Nate had something on you, a card up his sleeve, something that could burn everything you've built, your job, your name, your family. He let that hang in the air just for a second. And then I wonder, what if Ellie had that card too? Luis blinked, just once. No, I don't think she was part of it. Not really. But maybe she saw something, heard something. And Nate knew she did. That's when things started to spiral. "I doubt you handled anything directly," Silas said. "You don't strike me as that kind of guy. But maybe you looked the other way, for a cut. Not unusual in places like that. Quiet deals, dirty money. Grease the wheels, keep the fryer running, and no one asks where the money's really coming from." Silas was watching Luis closely. Not just his face, but the little things. Hands, shoulders, breathing. He kept going, like tossing out coordinates in a game of battleship. "You didn't kill Ellie, did you, Luis?" His tone shifted, almost sympathetic. "Nate did that part. Maybe you didn't even know until afterward. Maybe you thought it was an accident. Maybe not." Another pause. A slow inhale. "But if Nate killed Ellie, why would you kill Nate? He took care of your problem, right? He silenced her." Silas took a slow step forward, unless Nate had a change of heart. That gear we found in his trunk, a tent, a cooler, trail maps, flashlight, sleeping bag, everything pointed to the lake Gina mentioned, like he really was planning to go. He glanced around at the others, then back at Luis. "But your reaction yesterday when we saw that gas station footage, that caught my eye." Silas's voice dropped just a little. More intimate now, like he was sharing a secret. "You looked surprised to see him, Luis." "Not just surprised, rattled." "Why?" "Because maybe in your version of the plan, he wasn't supposed to be here anymore. He was supposed to be gone, out of town, out of your way." Luis didn't answer. His eyes shifted, not frantically, but searching. The kind of look a man gives when he knows the board just changed, and he's got no good moves left. Silas saw it, and so did I. Like hitting the last ship in Battleship. You try to stay calm, but the water's already rushing in. Luis looked at me, his sheriff. In that look, it wasn't fear, it was a question. "What is this, Sheriff? Why are you letting this happen?" That's what his eyes said. And I didn't have an answer. This case, it's been driving me mad. This girl, this town, this whole mess. I thought I had a handle on things. But now, Silas is spinning his web, and my own deputy is stuck in the middle of it. Just this morning, I almost lost my temper with Elena and Silas. What kind of circus is this? I couldn't believe Silas was even looking at Luis. But now I'm not so sure. I can't read people like he does. I've never been able to. But standing there, under that open sky, watching Luis, I swear I felt something. Something I didn't want to admit. It was hard listening to Elena quietly tell one of the agents to check Luis's alibi, to investigate my deputy. It wasn't just that Luis might be part of something dark. It was what that would mean, that I might have missed it, that I might have stood beside it this whole time, and worse, that maybe in some way I was part of it too. Not willingly, but blindly. And that thought, that's the one that twists in your gut. His expression said, "You've got nothing on me." And he wasn't wrong. Not yet. The alibi is still being checked. The bullet that killed Nate, unknown caliber for now, but still. "You know what I think happened?" Silas said. Ellie found out. And Nate, he didn't panic. He came to you, Luis, told you she knew, but it's okay, right? She's just a kid, naive, sweet. He probably said, "She won't tell anyone. I don't think she even wants to know more. She's not the type to stir things up. Long as it doesn't touch her, she'll leave it alone." And maybe he really believed that. But you? No, you didn't like it. You didn't like that everything you've built, your career, your life, could suddenly be in the hands of some 23-year-old girl. What if she changed her mind? What if she got scared? What if something upset her and she decided to talk? And Nate, well, he was a problem too, wasn't he? Because if Ellie talks and it all starts unraveling, who's to say Nate doesn't drag you down with him? One weak link, and the whole chain snaps. All because of her. So now it's not just one problem, it's two. You had the badge, the access, the knowledge. You knew how to make someone disappear, quietly, efficiently. So you told Nate, take a trip. Give yourself an alibi. Make sure no one ties anything to you. And while he's out there, far from town, you take care of the rest. But then, Nate broke the plan. He showed up again unexpected. You saw him on that gas station footage and you panicked, because now you had a third problem. He changed the rules. Came back. Maybe he felt guilty. Maybe he was having second thoughts. Maybe he wanted to warn Ellie. Who knows? But if Nate was willing to break the deal once, what's stopping him from breaking it again? He knew too much, and as long as he was alive, he'd always have that card to play. Two problems, one solution. And you, Luis, you were the only one in position to deliver it. You knew where to go. No cameras, no lights, just trees, dirt, and silence. You're the deputy. You know this county like the back of your hand. Every trail, every stretch of road that doesn't get patrolled after dark, that hole in the ground, the one we found Ellie in, that's not the kind of spot you just stumble onto. That's local knowledge. I stood there, the sheriff, watching the whole thing unfold like some theater play, trying to tell myself this was nonsense, that it was just the ramblings of a consultant with a flair for drama. And that's why I said at the beginning, this case was like nothing I'd ever seen, because everything Silas said, every word of it, turned out to be right to the tiniest detail. That kid doesn't just play Battleship. He sees the whole board before anyone else even picks up a peg. And Luis, he dug himself into a hole so deep there was no climbing out. Even if he wanted to walk away from it all, to back out of the game, it wouldn't have mattered. Nate would have still had that ace in his sleeve, that quiet, invisible threat. I know what you did. And Ellie? She never meant to be a threat, but she saw too much. And for Luis, that was enough. The truth came fast after that. Luis had no real alibi. And the deeper we dug, the more we found. Little details, buried transactions. And that was checkmate from himself.